tax rebate savings program. And I spoke to Donna. We're going to work on getting some local businesses in town to sign on. Great group of guys, and we'll meet again this next month. More ideas. Good. Eric?
Yeah, we got some exciting news. Yeah, Tom, thank you. We've got some exciting news. There's been a lot of discussion regarding the enhancements at Phillips Park. So representatives of HYA have been meeting with Victor Stevens to see what could be done. A few years ago, these gentlemen led an initiative to put some dugouts into the lower side of Phillips, and there's been some requests to get some concrete work done. The estimate was for about $30,000, and then there was a desire to put dugouts up north and again on the upper field, and to also do some concrete work there. So all said and done, it was about $60,000 worth of work. I'm very excited that between HYAA and the generosity of Mauricio Leal and Anthony Pesci, that entire cost is being covered. So I'm very proud of HYA, very proud of those two individuals. So Victor Stevens, I met with them, went over all the initiatives. That'll all be accomplished purely on volunteer and the user group. So I just want to thank all of them for their work and their initiative and for making that happen. Kudos.
Good. Thank you. I just would like to make a statement regarding the recreation needs assessment, which was produced by Keon Associates on March 13th. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, so we'll probably be chatting about that shortly. First of all, I am sure everyone here tonight would agree that the entire process did not go smoothly, and we are all surprised by the report's final recommendations. Many of you have reached out to this committee with varying opinions, and I assure you that the five of us take everyone's suggestions very seriously. I will say that this committee accepts the survey results presented by ETC Institute. We also accept the report, which can be used as a guide to understand the overall conditions of the recreation facilities in place today. However, we do reject the report's recommendations and have no plan on spending $35 million on recreation improvements. Both active and passive recreation activities are important to our community and help make Holmdel a special place for all of us to call home. We will continue to listen to the suggestions of the residents of Holmdel as we do each and every meeting. I assure you this committee will continue to be fiscally responsible when it comes to managing the township finances while we continue to improve the quality of services and infrastructure for all of our residents. Thank you, and I now open it up for public comment. Seeing none, who wants to be first? Jenny.
Sure, why not? I have some.
Seats.
Okay. Jenny Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. I read the agenda yesterday, and I had some questions, nitpicking. On the consent agenda, I wanted to bring to your attention on item E, which was approving the raise to your garbage bill, that Mazda cannot do their arithmetic any better than my garbage company can. They're saying that they're raising your annual fee, and I guess this is the garbage for all of the township buildings and parks and blah, blah, blah. $7,400 you had been paying per year?
Okay.
For the garbage for what?
For the garbage disposal of all of our dumpsters and things.
Okay, you had been paying $74. Then they raised it, according to the letter, 3.1%. Except if you do the arithmetic, the number that's on that letter is not right. By a few dollars.
Okay.
I mean, it's not as bad as my garbage company that I've been paying $39 for sent me a letter the other day saying that they were raising my garbage 5%, but the bill was for $64. I've had some conversations with them.
What I will tell you is that I actually looked specifically at this item because it's unusual that you have a contract being increased after the fact. The specific terms of the
Well, they said it was-
RFP and the contract allow for these forms of increases. And there was a letter in the file that documented the fact that the county rate went up, and the terms of the contract specifically
Yeah,
allow for
I mean, the
increase.
county reclamation centers, well, you guys said the increase was 3 point,
Right, but I thought that I thought what happened, and I don't do the purchasing, I just write the check out, but,
just watch out.
what I thought happened was that they didn't actually increase our price by the total amount of the increase in the tipping fees. So they split the difference with us, is
Well,
what I
they
thought
gave you
happened.
3.1%. My garbage man said it was 5%.
Right, well,
So you
that's-
did a better
that's-
deal.
that's exactly
But still,
what happened, Jenny.
Going from 39 to 64.50 is not 5%. And then, in the bills list, what is a dog trust? Item D02 for the tune of $4,069.50.
Right,
What's a
so-
dog trust?
So we have a dedicated dog trust. So when we charge for animal licenses, dog licenses, the money that we collect goes into that trust, and it's used for animal control services.
Oh, that you share with some other town?
No, well, no, we have contracts with Middletown
Right,
for
right.
animal control.
That's what I meant.
Deer carcass removal, things of that nature come out of that.
Okay, that's
money.
called a dog trust.
Correct.
Okay, and then there was another item, you paid fair housing $25,524.70. What's that for?
It's, part of it is contractual, I know that, for COA, but I don't have the specifics, you know, you could.
But we pay, to whom does this check
Well, there's-
go, the state?
No, we have a professional services that oversee some of our COA services, so our fair housing services, but I don't have the detail with me. You can
So that when
certainly
you get
come
that to
see
Jenny
me.
tomorrow, she'll have it
Absolutely.
for you tomorrow.
And then there were two other budget changes. You paid $5,000 for our free library and $12,000 to the Environmental Commission. What was that for?
That was the Rutgers study.
Thank you, Jenny.
I guess that's all my complaints for right now.
Hi, Jamie Hines, 2 Cindy Court. I missed the last meeting, but since you don't agree with the results of the recreation study, what is the next step for people who are interested in improving the recreation for the kids?
What I said is we don't agree with the recommendations, the 10-year payout of $35 million. It's a lot of money,
Okay.
and it seemed to stir up a lot of anxiety amongst a lot of the public 2 weeks ago. We've discussed it, we've read it, we are now going through the capital part of our budget, and we're going to try to figure out what's more important to the 5 committee members. Mr. Tempo's not here tonight. We obviously understand that recreation needs to be enhanced to a degree. We're going to
Okay,
need to make
excellent.
some improvements because it'll deteriorate just like the streets will if you don't take care of it. But specifically, we don't have an exact idea of what we'd like to do just yet.
Okay, will that be on another agenda or like any
Well,
last?
I think the budget has to pass, be introduced in April, so I would think that capital will be introduced in April, so come on back in 2 weeks.
Okay. But you guys are definitely interested in making improvements, and you agree that it's a need?
I think there's a need for some recreation improvements, but I only one vote.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else care to speak tonight? Mr. Crowley?
Joe Crowley, 15 Ely Road. First of all, thank you for clarifying the approach. I think $35 million for recreation needs is unjustified at this point. Personally, I think the #1 need for the community in terms of recreation needs is a multifunction artificial turf field. I think the place to put it is behind Saks. I understand it will require coordination with the Board of Ed. I think that has the benefit of serving many sports. I think that needs to be in addition to Roby Field. I think that the use that's there is warranted. I think there needs to be an accommodation for baseball. such as a turf infield. Already this baseball season, we have moved high school games to other towns. Our JV teams have had multiple games canceled. I think baseball and softball in particular are much more sensitive to the weather than most sports, and deserve the same kind of accommodation support that other sports benefit from in terms of multi-function field like Rogie. I think for our youth baseball program, putting an artificial turf infield in Phillips Park lower would be a reasonable way to go. Much less expensive than doing the full artificial turf field there. I think there are other needs. There are needs for basketball, for which I'm not well informed. There are needs for wrestling, cheerleading, and other facilities. And I think those need to be evaluated and prioritized appropriately. I will say I'm speaking only for myself. I did send out an email. I encourage people to come out and speak about their opinions. I was told that I was one of the powers that be spreading hysteria. I apologize if I spread any hysteria. It was not my objective. And my wife will tell you that it is only under my most delusional days that I think I'm one of the powers that be. Also, in the email I sent out, there were some errors. It said it was a 38-page survey. I was corrected, it was only 7 pages. But it did feel like 38 when I was filling it out. I do think the survey was flawed in its recommendations. I think there is useful information in there in terms of identifying what we have and some level of what we need. I don't think we need another year's worth of study. I think there's a lot that we can glean from the survey, and I think the town committee can make some intelligent judgments based on it. Finally, I appreciate everybody who's here. I appreciate the people who speak for saving Holmdel Village. I appreciate the people who are coming out for recreational needs. And I would ask that this discourse be courteous and respectful, and realize that we will do best when we listen to each other and we try to do reasonable things within the constraints of the town budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Jared.
Jerry Buffalino, 20 Barbera Drive. When you introduce the budget, the question I have is, will that also reveal any future debt issuance plans?
So the capital budget, we're going to introduce 2 budgets, the operating budget and the capital budget,
Okay.
and that will only cover 2018.
Okay, so nothing beyond that. as far as-
Jeanette, you're free to answer.
Right, so when we introduce the budget, it will have a 5-year capital plan,
Yeah.
but it's just a plan. It's not
It's not
anything
written
set in stone, but
okay.
we're required by law to have some 5-year anticipated projection. But it can be changed, and it's not permanent in nature.
And we're not bonding for that.
No.
No, I
We're
understand.
bond for the 1-year capital
Right.
plan.
Does the town do any kind of cash flow projections?
Of course.
And are those available to us?
I don't have anything that's available. It's not in the budget.
So keep in mind, are you talking about debt reduction, Joe?
Not necessarily. I'm just, as a finance guy, this is what I did for a living. And so,
Municipal finance?
no, commercial.
Oh, commercial.
Corporate. So, and I've been involved in a lot of transactions
Mhm.
over the years, and I kind of know how to assess debt capacity and things of that nature. And I know municipalities are different than a company, right? But debt is debt, and my thought is, if you're looking at future expenditures of a significant amount, your cash flow forecasts would be important, and Tom, you know this as an accountant. And so if we could take a look at that kind of stuff, we would be able to appreciate a little better how strong we are as a town. I know a lot of people have a feeling that we're rich, and I've heard this said in this meeting before. And I don't know our physical condition per se, but my thought is, there's a lot of wealthy people that live in the town, but this town is not rich. I mean, how much cash do we have?
Well, Jared, let me give you a little bit of insight on that, just because number one, I don't know how people define rich, but as far as revenue,
Yeah.
right, 88% of our revenue comes from the residents. So we're not rich in ratables. When you're 11 or 12% of your capital comes from rates, so I don't think that we're rich. I think that puts a pretty big responsibility on the residents. I think when you look at, what's controllable and what's not controllable,
Right.
as much as that's predictable to an extent, it becomes a little bit tricky. And let me give you an example.
Okay.
The pension, as you know, New
Yeah.
Jersey stands at an incredible $130 billion pension.
I know.
So I'm like you, I do finance all day long.
Mhm.
And when I'm told that the pension is 10%, that's our responsibility to put in 10%. So if my payroll's $4 million, 10% is,
400,000.
right. So when I get a bill, when I say I, meaning we, we're
Right.
speaking, sometimes I have doing that,
Mhm.
and I get a bill for $1.3 million, that's odd, right? Oh, the state is what? The state is behind, so the rich Holmdel pays, and everyone is that. But we are paying the pension deficits to the tunes of 28% right now. That's what it's costing to pay for the pension
Right.
down, shortfall.
Yep.
So,
And that's going to increase.
and if you look at things like healthcare costs, which we have no control over,
It's out of control.
they have literally doubled in the last 3.5 years. So we can project revenue based on our budget because we vote on the budget. Last year was a 0 on the municipality side.
Yeah.
But remember, the challenge for us is we collect the money,
Yeah.
right? That's only 16%. Board's about 68. We pay the county 14. We have a library tax we pay, and we pay open space, both Holmdel and to the county.
But let me ask you another question. Does the town have any reserves set aside for emergencies? I mean, this was talked about at the last meeting. Unforeseen things, right? Talking about getting down.
That's where
That's where
municipal finance is a little different than corporate finance.
Yeah, so,
Because you don't have the benefit, I would say, or the luxury to kind of put a rainy day fund away as a
Right.
personal or corporation. You really don't have that luxury.
we're basically pay as you go.
Correct. Now, where we're benefiting from an interest rate standpoint, is we're retiring debt that we're paying 4.75 and 5%,
Right.
and we're reissuing anywhere from 1.75 to 3%, depending on our longevity.
I get it.
So again, from a financial standpoint, we're building our strength. At the same time, we do have a revenue. It just takes a lot longer than I would like, or anyone up here would like,
Mhm.
with the pilot money and increased revenue from commercial ratables.
Yeah.
It just takes time. So I would say that in the future, it would look brighter, providing there's no mysteries out there. But unfortunately, financially, there's huge mysteries out of healthcare and pension reform.
Nobody knows, I know. And right now, you have a Democratic governor, which is going to go in the opposite direction from the Republicans up there. And Steve Sweeney's on 101.5 being interviewed right now. And you know where he stands and everything, right? All right, I get the sense, I understand, but that's my view, is really financial responsibility at this point, because the numbers we're talking about are really large, or were really large.
But when you talk about like capital expenditure too, like
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that we take that very, very serious. I think it's well known that I've often felt that we've neglected recreation, but financial is the #1 priority. But just so you know how the way it works, like let's say I wanted to bond for $1 million because I was passionate and we were passionate, felt it was the right thing for the town, it was going to benefit the town. The average homeowner, that's probably about $8 to the average homeowner. So discounting any future revenues against, assuming that Bellworks provided 0.
Mhm.
So if Bellworks provided 0, which I think is extremely unlikely, it's not like it's going to make or break. And if you feel like it's going to increase the value of the community, that's where it becomes one of these decisions. So it's not a, we can all argue about priorities and roads and curbs and safety versus recreational, and safety always trumps all. Financial, fiscal responsibility trumps all. But within that balance, I think creating a community that is extremely desired for is also something that I like to consider important.
I don't think anybody would argue about that.
Or people would.
Well,
I can show you a few.
I think the cost of what we're doing in terms of artificial turf fields being extraordinarily expensive. Now, I was on a committee to raise money for roaming, and I know what that costs. That thing's not even down 10 years, and already you're spending money to resurface it. You put in another 5 of those fields, and you're gonna quadruple the amount of money you're gonna spend on maintenance.
I think there's 2 points there. I don't think anyone's talking about putting in 5 fields, and I would say number 2 is that just like we did with HYA, user groups, which we're in perpetual conversation with, are very, very, very willing to contribute and participate.
They should.
We just haven't even got there because finding a location, how you pay for the upfront and then create a revenue stream. You know, a turf field can actually pay for itself in 10 or 15 years, believe it or not, you
There's a
know?
lot of debates on it because they're not been around that long, and the environmental impacts of them.
Well, that's a whole different story. It's a whole different
Yeah,
story.
but this is what concerns me the most, is our viewpoint on what we should have and what other towns have and we don't have. That's not the argument. It's what we should have that's right. Because other towns may be suffering in the future, and you don't want this town to go through the same fiscal problems that they're having. It's just how I see things. Because I've seen things like this before in the corporate world, and companies go out of, you know, they're doing well, and all of a sudden they're spending extraordinary amounts of money, and then 5 years later, they're in a recession, and they're going broke. And I know you're a market guy, right?
Yeah.
You saw what happened to the market today.
See what happens every day, you
Well,
know?
what's going on with the market is the
but I would
market
tell you,
interest is so high right now
Yeah.
that it's forcing them to sell before they have to, and it's drawing down the market extraordinarily well. It's dead.
yeah, I understand leverage very well, and I would tell you in the 7 years that I've been part of here, you know, that it's been extremely important that we remain fiscally responsible. So, you know, certainly the group and my direction is to always lead with fiscal responsibility. But within that, they're starting to see, I mean, you can never spend money, and then, you know, you wait too long, and what else does that do? So I think there's got to be always a balance that has to be looked at.
Okay, that's all I want to know, is that you guys are looking at this at the right way.
Very hard.
Okay. Very
Thank you,
good.
Jerry.
No part.
Sir.
Gene Luciani, 10 Country.
You got to speak into the mic.
mic, sir.
I'm sorry.
Gene Luciani, 10 Country Squire Lane in Holmdel. I've only got two picayune comments. I looked at the recreational report. And first of all, and then I looked at the field over at the
High school?
no, not the high school, the one down in the south,
Village School, Cross Farms?
Cross Farms, yeah. And I didn't see the need for example, dugouts. I saw what we have there, and it looked like it was.
The dugouts are not going to Cross Farms, they're going to Phillips Park, sir.
Okay, all right, there may be a different situation.
Right. And just to be clear again, in case you want to hear, that is 0, 0, 0 to the taxpayer. Matter of fact, the gentleman that is donating that just came in, so I'd like to give him a little round of applause. Mauricio Leal just came in. Thank you, Mauricio.
Another thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is about lighting. When we go past Lincroft, we see they have lighted fields. First of all, they're lit like broader than daylight, which is seems overkill to me. And secondly, they're going till late at night. And if I don't know about anybody else, but I know when I had kids here, I would not have liked them going to play till 11 o'clock at night, because that means they're coming in, you know, by midnight. And when do they have done their homework and everything else?
So our lights go off at the high school at 9:15.
Very good. So that was the other question I had.
Yeah.
That's a curfew.
Occasionally, it goes, you know, a half an hour later, but 90% of the time, they're off at 9:15.
And I live across the street, so it's there.
Okay, that's.
So there's a curfew, we're very conscious of that.
Okay, very good. The other thing, if you did, for some reason, decide that it would be a good idea to have some lights down there, you don't need to have it as bright as day, and you don't need to have it, you know, 20 feet tall. And to be very careful about, you know, how much you want to put in, and whether you want, you know, just solar lights or something like that to cut the cost down. It's just a thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stacy Savage, 24 McCampbell Road. I just want to know, and I apologize for not doing my homework, who is the recreation liaison from the committee?
That would be Mr. Hines.
I am? I think in as much as Tom is, I think there might be the unofficial, but I think that we really don't have a subcommittee focused on recreation.
So then I'd like to understand how the decision was made with HYA funds to upgrade Phillips Park versus the other township parks?
So, Joe, do you want to handle that?
I think that might have come from the baseball commission.
Yes,
HYAA, so that's a good question, though.
Because you're upgrading a facility that is only used by one population, boys baseball. Where girls softball sits at Cross Farms with poor drainage, no lights whatsoever, and I really don't understand why one sport would be picked over another.
We didn't make that decision. Again, just to reiterate, I mean, it is the HY and the volunteers that are paying. I mean, we just supported and made sure that from an infrastructure standpoint, they were not doing anything that was, as much as we appreciate donations, we still need to make sure that it works for us, and you're not putting concrete and blocking off or not doing things that would hurt Disabilities Act or anything like that. So we need to make sure you follow a certain protocol. So I would recommend you speak to the leadership at HYAA and discuss that.
So there was no decision on your part or no input on your part of what would be done with the HYAA funds and the donated materials?
No, we have no control over that. Zero.
Okay, and another question. This seems to be a very cyclical topic where we go around and we go around. My family has lived in this town for over 50 years, and they can basically write the book on how this will end with the township recreation facilities. And back in the 80s when SATS was upgraded, and it was SATS was upgraded with Board of Education funds and township community funds, and now look at it. So, where is the timeline? Where is there, we're frustrated. We sat here a year ago, the ad hoc committee was put together, promised that there would be something that would come out of it, something that would be beneficial to the town. And now you sit here and say, well, it didn't work, communication didn't work, so now, trust us, we're going to come up with something. So what are the residents of Holmdel supposed to wait for?
So
forget the residents. What about the children of Holmdel? What are they supposed to wait for?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little history on my upbringing in this town. I've been here since '91, so that's 27 years. In 2000, I was frustrated with the township committee who was in charge back then. We didn't have any lights in town. My boys and my daughter all played baseball all across sports, travel teams. We played under lights in Hazlitt. We played under lights everywhere we went. So, in conjunction with HYAA and the township, we put a plan together where the township would donate engineering services, HYAA would pay for lights, and my company would install those lights for a fee, a total cost of $75,000. That was 18 years ago. 18 years later, those are still the only lights we have in town.
So you're telling me that I'll have to wait till my oldest is 40 before he gets upgraded fields?
I feel personally that we should do some improvements to the sports fields. I've been clear about that. I think Mr. Hines feels passionately about that. But as we told Mr. Buffalino, we need to manage the finances of the town in an appropriate and fiscally conservative way. I'm not in favor of raising taxes, so we'll work with our CFO every day trying to figure out ways that we can do everything that we like to do, including pave the roads in this town, which are in really poor shape. Because prior to the last 3 or 4 years, there was no paving going on because the town didn't have any money. So we're dealing with a lot of different issues, a lot of challenges. But I assure you, we are talking, and I think the men to my left also agree that we're looking to do something for the recreation community in this town.
Well, I mean no disrespect, but this is exactly what was said a year ago. So
I hear you. I understand.
The residents of the town are losing faith and trust.
Then they could re-elect someone else. We got elected and we will do it. Every year this committee changes and that committee has to make decisions. And this committee will make a decision and we will include rec improvements. It's gonna happen. I take offense with your tone. I don't come here to get abused from people for this. All of us will make this decision. We have enough information, we listen to people, they send us mails, and we will make changes. Might not be the changes that all of you want, but we're gonna make changes to recreation for the better. When my kids came here 35 years ago, they had nothing. There were no sports at all. So we're gonna make changes. I hope you like them. If you don't, vote us out.
Please don't mistake mistake my frustration for disrespect. I appreciate what every single one of you do on this committee because you're volunteering your time and it's a thankless job. I come from a civil service family and I understand what you put up with every day. But you have to understand that a year ago, this was the same conversation with no change. And that was with a study, and that was with an ad hoc committee that my father-in-law was on. So I know that nothing has changed in a year, nothing. And can you agree that nothing recreation-wise has changed in 1 year's time?
Absolutely, and we were waiting for the report to be issued, and it was obviously delayed.
And that is my point. In 1 year's time, nothing has changed.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Weber.
Kathy Weber, 4 Duncan Drive. I would like to say thank you for accepting the results of the ETC survey, but yet rejecting the recommendations as they were presented in the whole. I understand that you need to do more review of that information and come up with what's best for the town. I just want to make sure that you all have all the information, which includes, which was not in the report, the 16 pages of comments from over 400 or so people who did take the time to fill out the survey. And those comments, just in a nutshell, include things that I'm not saying I agree with, but just to put them out there because these weren't referenced in the report. Numerous requests for a 9-hole golf course and or mini golf, numerous requests for dog parks, indoor swimming pools, bike lanes, and about 10 other items, recreation items, as well as comments about paving roads, potholes, full-day summer camp, deer control, lower taxes and garbage, and programming for teens, special needs, 50 plus, and exercise type items. So there's actually a fair amount of material in here that I don't know if was ever looked at. And so I just want to make sure you have that and when you're looking at it. And I also want to say on behalf of Preserve Holmdel that I appreciate the comments from Mr. Crowley and concur with many of his comments, including the fact that we should support meeting the needs of our HYAA Holmdel children for recreation in perspective with all the other needs of the town. But the Preserve Holmdel remains adamantly opposed to artificial turf and lights at Cross Farm, primarily because that is a Green Acres property, which can then be used by, and indeed has to be allowed use to, any town, anywhere in the state of New Jersey, from Cape May to whatever town you can think of in North Jersey. And that is another piece of the concern with that issue. But having said that, we're neutral relative to turf and lights at the high school SATS complex, but we're concerned about an open, transparent process and full disclosure relative to where those funds are coming from, how those funds are going to be obtained. We're not opposed to children. We want to make sure we're doing what's right for all the children and all the residents in Holmdel. And in closing, the other thing that I just got copies of that wasn't in the report were the summaries of the interviews with the key stakeholders. And I don't know if you have seen those either, but I hope you do. And from the Board of Ed, Dr. McGarry, and the athletic director, the following comments were stated. And again, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just trying to share information. There may not be enough interest by students in the future for the district to field a high school baseball team. Swimming is also of high interest with approximately 62 students participating. Training and home meets are held in South Amboy, which requires busing our students. That's for training, not just meets. And there's high demand for court time for basketball, with 3 different leagues competing for space. They also said that enrollment the district was set up to accommodate 3,700 students, and at its peak enrolled 3,500, but enrollments have been declining. And they said that the current referendum includes a substantial investment to provide the underground infrastructure, for future expansion of electric at all facilities, and the district is amenable to the township participating in expanding lighting of facilities once this new underground infrastructure is in place. And lastly, they say the recreation needs of special needs students are likely not being met, but are difficult metric to measure because of privacy. So this is just one of the interviews, but I'm hoping that you will get a chance to see that information as well as the survey, and thank you for your time.
Okay, Kathy. Just want to remind everybody, we have a 3-minute limit, please, if we can honor that. We've been here since 4:45 today, so some of my fellow committeemen are getting a little tired.
Jay Yanello, 18 Library Drive. I just want to echo Kathy Weber's comments that appreciate that you accept the results of the survey and that you reject the proposed capital improvement plan by T&M. I have a question, with all due respect to you, Fran. So as far as I know, with Cross Farm Park, T&M worked on that, and then there were flooding and drainage problems, and then they redid it, and then now we still have drainage problems, and now we've had arguably a pretty notable situation with this capital improvement plan being dislocated from the survey results. So is T&M still involved in the recreational process going forward?
There is no process going forward, Jay. We have the report. As far as I'm concerned, there will be no more meetings and no more interviews and no more commentary from T&M Associates or anybody from the ad hoc committee.
Okay, so kind of echoing the comments from some of the sports community in town, how will we know what projects are up for consideration? I know you said you could see the budget coming up, but I mean, it's just going to be in the budget and you say, okay, open session, let's talk about it?
Well, the budget will be introduced next month, God willing. Okay. And in it, there will be a capital portion that will be broken down between public works, public safety, recreation will be in there, and then you can ask us questions about what if there's anything allocated to recreation, we'll be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, and will T&M be doing the engineering for the recreation work going forward, or will it be an open process? How will that work?
I can't say for sure on that. Well, the engineer, it depends. It really depends. We don't even know what we're budgeting for yet, so it's a hypothetical.
That's fine. And I just want to, because I'm one of the key members of Save Holmdel Village, and often we're demonized, and I just want to be clear for people in the room and to remind you guys, I stood up here a month ago and concurred kind of with Eric saying, you know, we're not necessarily against turf field and towers at the school if we can get comfortable with the environmentals. We have pointed out in the past with pictures and tweets about the blue tarps keeping some of the dugouts dry. We've pointed out how there's duct tape used often for the volleyball nets at the schools. So Save Holmdel Village is not against recreational improvements in town. We just want, as Ms. Weber said from Preserve Holmdel, an open, clean process. And we have taken a lot of time with a lot of other individuals to point out flaws in this process before. So I just want to clarify that. My final question, while I have 3 minutes and this is way off the path, in the village area, excuse me, there's a building now that is using 3 separate types of LED lighting. 1 box window shade, 1 strip across the roof, and now we have a different shade on a box signage. I would strongly encourage you guys to possibly discuss or put a zoning ordinance together with the zoning board, or go whatever procedures you need to start limiting LED lighting around windows and buildings in town, because it really starts looking ridiculous. And again, 1 building has 3 different sets, 3 different shades in the middle of the village area. It looks like something you would see in Bangkok at like midnight on a Saturday night.
Mr. Mayor, comment. I just have a comment. I know I'm tired, I know I'm getting a little cranky, but...
You're gonna come at me, let's go.
We listen, we've been listening for a while, I appreciate what you say, I appreciate what everyone says. But I think for me, and I think for all of us, we're ready to act now. I don't want to listen anymore, I want to do. And I think every one of us is here ready to do for the budget, so we're ready to act. I just want to let you know, I appreciate it, but I'm done. I just want to act. Now it's time for us to decide what we're going to do.
Okay, and I would strongly discourage, as Ms. Weber said, on multiple reasons beyond what she cited, turf and light towers at Cross Farm Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak tonight? Michael Cleary.
6 Kathy Court.
You can take that out, Mike, thanks.
I'm a little taller than everybody else. I just want to point out that I got kids and I'm involved a lot in recreation, but I'm involved passionately in the two groups that aren't serviced at all by our town. The wrestling program and the football program. We don't use any of the town facilities, we use all of the Board of Education facilities. So currently our town is letting those two groups down. I understand it's a balance between using all the facilities, but Rocco says he's ready to act. I want to make sure everybody knows before they act that the wrestling program and the football program do not receive any benefit from the town.
Send us an email so we can see what you're thinking, like Crowley does all the time.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else care to speak tonight? It's only 8:20. Sir. I think we're getting close to the end.
Ron, I'm at 32 Ladwood Drive, Holmdel. The money was approved for paving of Middletown Road.
Correct.
Is there a schedule when that'll be started and completed?
Fran, do we know when that's starting?
We're hoping to award it the end of June, so we can get construction starting sometime in July, so we can be done hopefully fall.
Labor Day?
Well, we can try. I mean, there'll be punch list items and stuff.
Okay. It'll be done this summer. Started this summer, finished by the fall.
Thank you. The second thing, a couple of meetings ago, I brought up the issue of the firehouse on the south side of town. And you said, Mayor, that you were working on it. You had some news you might be able to talk about further in the future. I just want to know what, as far as the firehouse and fire safety and response times on the south side of town. I know you mentioned there's going to be a committee. Is there any other developments where you can...
Well, you're going to hear that. We'll let you know where we are now, what we're doing right now to protect the town. We're going to let you know what you can do, but more importantly, what our plan is. We listen to fire professionals, both sides of it, and we're going to come with a plan, well, a couple plans, what we think we can do to make our fire protection A1. Again, it's a cost thing too. We don't want to go crazy with the cost, but we want to protect you. But we also want your guys' opinion. So if I present you with 3 plans at that night, I want you guys to say, well, I like this, I don't like that. So we're there, we got our plans. Right now, we've improved our mutual aid agreement, so at least we have people coming to help us in the meantime. But yes, we got plans, and we're going to share them with you shortly. We'll have that meeting. Please come. Voice your opinion and let us know what you think.
I don't think you're going to have any lack of enthusiasm for fire safety in the south side of town.
Well, you guys will come, but everybody should come.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Okay. Seeing nobody else comment, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, you have one? Might be the last.
Yeah, might as well. Joe Schmidt, 26 Apple Grove Drive. I was here last year. I volunteered, my time to the ad hoc committee. My application didn't get to participate. I didn't get to participate, as far as I know, in a survey that went out. I feel like I haven't gotten a lot of information as to what's been going on for the past year. When we were talking about this last year, it seemed like it was only a turf field and where it was going to go. And we weren't talking about $35 million. Right. So how that was inflated, I'd like to understand. But it's a simple decision. Do we want to invest in sports? And I haven't seen any investment, and I've been here for over 10 years. I haven't seen any investment. If you could tell me something that's significant, I'd like to know. But our kids are involved in lacrosse, which is a very growing sport in the state. There are no fields. We can barely get lines on the fields that we have. We're a village school. The season is short, so it's going to be ending in the middle of May. It hasn't even started because the fields are in